Thirsty for action? Let's crack open the Sunday Six Pack.
All right, as we talked about before, good week for us, 4-2, 37-33 me, and I am up first this week. So I will start it off with the first pick of the Week 11 Sunday six-pack and go with the Los Angeles Rams +1 at home against the Seattle Seahawks. Like the spots and the matchup for the Rams coming off of a bye, getting Matthew Stafford back at quarterback. And I think that, you combine coming off the bye with and the Brett Rippon start the game before. And I just think everyone's kind of sleeping on the Rams a little bit and doesn't realize that this is a pretty even matchup. And the Rams probably should be favored by like a half point to a point, because even if you don't remove the Brett Rippon game, the Rams have a better schedule adjusted point differential than the Seahawks. The Rams have the better quarterback. And I mean, not just my opinion. I think the numbers back it up this year. EPA per play, Matthew Stafford 15th, Geno Smith 19th. We saw this matchup in week 1. Granted, there were some injuries on the Seattle side, but it's still notable that the Rams outgained the Seahawks 426-180 and more than doubled them up in first downs, 27-13. And that was without Cooper Kupp, who's going to be back. And I think having Kupp is big because, the Seahawks add Witherspoon to the middle of that defense, and he has been causing some havoc and creating some incompletions and whatnot. But now you're talking about one of the best receivers in the game. So he's going to, Kupp's going to get some wins in there as well. And I think that the strength of schedule creates some value as well, because the Rams have faced the fourth toughest slate of opposing defenses by DVOA. Seattle's faced the third easiest. And just in general, if you look at the schedule, Seattle's wins have not been very impressive. It's the Giants, a bottom 5 team, the Panthers, a bottom 5 team, the Cardinals pre-Kyler, bottom 5 team. They beat Washington last week, not a bottom 5 team, but already had a fire sale, and not probably bottom 10 team at least. And you had to win on a field goal as time expired. You beat the Browns with PJ Walker by taking the lead in the final minutes and then getting a lucky tip ball to end it. And then you beat Detroit in overtime. So your real only wins of any substance are against bottom 5 teams. And then every other win is like a coin flip where it could have gone either way. So I'm not really impressed with this Seattle team at all. And that goes back to last year when we saw the Seattle team kind of play down to its competition, even though they ended up getting in the playoffs. And I think Geno Smith this year hasn't been quite as good as last year. I don't want to say he regressed. I just think he's kind of who he is. He probably was playing a little over his head last year, but he has struggled against this Raheem Morris defense the last 2 meetings. And remember, that's this year in week 1. And then last year at the end of the year, when remember, Aaron Donald was out and like half the defense was out as well. I remember at one point, I think you had the Rams in that one, and you were just like, they're professionals. Like that was your whole, it was just like, yo, they're professionals. They'll figure it out. Because that's all you really could say. And Geno Smith in those last 2 meetings has barely completed 60% of his passes, averaging just 5.7 yards an attempt on 57 attempts, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and the Seahawks are averaging just 16 points per game in those 2 matchups. So I think, I think Stafford, Kupp, Nakua coming off a bye, McVay, I think they'll find a way to get it done here on offense. And I even though the Rams defense isn't great, I do think Geno Smith will have a little bit of trouble on that side. And this is the matchup that you want to fade the Seahawks and target the Rams. Sean McVay career versus the Seahawks and Pete Carroll, 10-4 against the spread, covering by an average of 5.3 points per game. In the last 6 meetings, 6-0 against the spread. So give me the Los Angeles Rams +1. Don't mind it at a pick. Don't even mind it at -1. I think that's about as far as I'd go, but love the matchup for LA.
Yeah, so I had this when we were doing our draft and in Slack. I said, you're up first this week, and then I typed in my first pick, getting ready, and it was the Rams. So
second week in a row, I think.
Yep, this would have been my first pick. And yeah, McVay, he used to own it's the circle of life in the NFC West. His offenses they used to always own the old Pete Carroll style defenses. Now they've tweaked their scheme a little bit. McVay still rips them apart. 9-1 against the spread against the Seahawks in the past 10 meetings, including the playoffs. And that was with last year, the Seahawks had to win at the end of the year. The Rams were playing with backup quarterbacks. So John, who I forget, Wolford was probably one.
Yep.
Baker maybe was another. And the Seahawks won both those games by 3. Yeah, I think there's a great spot. McVay also good off of a bye, good after a loss. You also should get Havenstein back at right tackle, Ernest Jones back in the middle at linebacker, who's probably their second best defender after Aaron Donald. And yeah, I think this is a good matchup. I've said before, I think that the Seahawks defense is overrated going into that Ravens game. I mean, last week, Sam Howell looked like an all-pro. I think this defense has major holes, and Stafford should have a big day. Gino will probably make a mistake or two. I like the Rams here too. So for my first pick and the second of the Week 11 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Chicago Bears +9. I believe this is the first time in 6-pack history that I've taken the Bears. I don't know if that's right, but I can't remember if I've ever taken the Bears in the 6-pack.
Not that I remember.
I'm riding with your boy Justin Fields, who should return here. So why do I like this bet? I had a rough morning. I had Rams typed in, and then you responded with Rams. I logged into one of my books to put in Bears +10, and I said, I'm going to check one other thing. And I came back 2 minutes later, and it was at 9.5. So I missed the 10 there, but I still like it at 9. I bet it at 9 and 9.5. And why do I like the Bears here? Well, one, I think this is just a good buy low, sell high spot as far as where these teams sit in the market. Lions covering machines. We know that coming off that crazy win. Credit to Dan Campbell for all those 4th down decisions. I think they needed every one of them because their defense wasn't going to get stops. But I think this is probably the peak of the Lions market value once again, until they, maybe they get flattened again, or this is a close game. But look, the Lions defense has holes. We'll start there. The secondary is bad. They've placed some absolute clown car quarterbacks and that have inflated their numbers. But anytime they face the competent quarterback, especially one that can move around, it's disastrous. So their linebackers aren't that fast. And the way that they're playing mobile quarterbacks, they're so worried about them running that they're not attacking the quarterback. They're not going after him. And then the quarterbacks end up running anyway. And then there's just, they can't cover downfield. It's a disaster. I mean, you saw what happened with the Chargers and the Ravens, just absolutely ripping their secondary apart. So I think Fields, who I think rushed for, 160 in one game against the Lions last year, should have a big game with his legs. And I think that he can have some success through the air. One of the things that, I don't know if this has been talked about. I was reading it on some Bears message board. There was a video that came out with Justin Fields in his in practice and this week, and he was in his 7-step drop. He was getting back 1.92 seconds, and he was one of the slowest quarterbacks in NFL history when he would do those long drops, and it would end up causing a lot of pressure, and he was just so slow to get back. So someone pointed out, and they were timing it, and they must have worked on it, and it must have been a point of emphasis because all these dropbacks he was getting back in 2 seconds, which I think is huge because it really hurt their passing efficiency. But I think that the Bears overall are just generally a bit undervalued right now. And this is, I just think, too many points in a divisional game. But the Bears haven't been good this year, but their offensive line is now healthy. It's trending in the right direction. You might get Herbert back, but their run game's been very good anyway. You obviously have Kmet, you have an upgraded wide receiver room. And then on the defensive side of the ball, this defense, historically bad last year, trending that way again earlier this season. But they did go out and upgrade the defense coming into the year, but they had a ton of injuries, right? Ton of injuries in the secondary. Secondary is now healthy. Couldn't really get pressure. Before last week against the Panthers, league low 22% pressure rate. But what did they do? They went out and they got Sweat. And Sweat, I think, had 5 pressures, the most of any Bear this year. I know it was Bryce Young, but they had like a 35% pressure rate. And it takes attention off of the other defensive linemen. Their run defense, because of the upgrades at linebacker, the signings in the interior, the run defense has actually been really good. So I think that they can hold up here against Detroit. So I think this defense is actually trending in the right direction. Getting an edge piece like Sweat can just do so much for the rest of the defensive line. I don't think they're going to be in Goff's face all day. The Lions have a great offensive line, but it's not going to be like last week for the Lions where they can just push this Bears D-line around and just run at will like you can do against the Chargers. And now with a healthier secondary for the Bears, Fields healthy, this little improvement in his drop back against a bad Lions D. I think this is a good time to buy in on the Bears, who are coming in off of a bit of an extended bye here, or I should say a short bye after playing on Thursday. So, give me the Chicago Bears +9 at Detroit.
Damn, bro, this is how I know you're feeling under the weather. You just called Justin Fields a competent quarterback right off the bat.
I told you.
This is amazing.
But by the way, like this number, it's just look, the home field advantage in the NFL, it's going down and down and down. It's even lower. I mean, it's so low for a divisional game because you have familiarity indoors. Home field is so low for for this specific circumstance. 2 weeks ago, the Lions closed as 6.5-point favorites at home in prime time against the Raiders and Jimmy G.
Yep. I was definitely backing the Lions in that one.
And that closed under a touchdown. And that was in home field means a little bit more there, prime time, non-conference matchup. And the Raiders defense right now, if you compare both of these defenses, they're both not good defenses, but I would take the Bears slightly over the Raiders. And I would take, I would probably take the Bears offense. It's close to a wash, basically. I mean, I'm splitting hairs. These are teams that I have the Bears rated like a hair better than the Raiders, but I'm getting 9 here in the divisional matchup, a couple extra days of prep, whereas the market closed that Raiders at 6.5 in that game. So I think this is too high. I think this should be like 7.5.
You sound like me before the season. Man, this is hilarious. Get my MVP
ticket in. I'm gonna go buy Fields MVP.
Irrational love for the Bears defense. Oh, you called Fields confident. I mean, what's next, man? But truthfully, I didn't have a great feel for. I know a lot of people are on the. I know Sharp Money's on the Bears. I didn't have a great feel for it until you broke it down just now. I was actually kind of looking more for this to be a shootout. I think everything's true what you said about the Lions defense and the Bears and Fields, but I am worried about that Bears pass defense because their run defense has been pretty solid. It's been about league average, but their pass defense is still bad. So I'm kind of thinking that this makes the Lions go a little pass heavier. And the one thing about the Lions that I guess is a concern for your bet is just this is pretty much now I guess their second game having all of their offensive pieces, Gibbs, Montgomery, Jamison Williams, a healthy line. I know they put Vitae on IR, but Glasgow's been graded out as a top 5 guy, so you're not really losing anything. So that's the only thing is that the Lions could put up a big number, the Bears will have to match it. But the Bears have been, putting up points in field starts. Going back to last year, he started as like an under quarterback, and now and then he started putting up points, and the defense is shaky. So I could see some points being scored here, but it is a divisional matchup, so don't hate it taking the
I wouldn't mind
touchdown.
If the lines are smart, which they are, then they probably will go pass heavier here, and they might continue the aggression on fourth down. The Bears pass defense does grade out poorly, but I think that it's a unit that's undervalued in the market because now they can get a little bit more pressure, which obviously helps the secondary with Sweat, and then you take away Ngakoue was playing decent at the beginning of the year, and then teams just said, "We'll take him away." And then what else? There's pressure coming from nowhere else. But also the secondary, a ton of injuries, and now the secondary is finally fully healthy. And Jalen Johnson has been one of the most surprising corners in the NFL. Kyler Gordon is playing really well, and then you got Brisker and Jackson on the back end now healthy. So added pressure, healthier secondary. I don't think that they're as bad as the numbers have been. So I think that unit is a bit undervalued.
All right. I don't hate it. All right. For my second pick and the third overall of the week 11 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings plus 2.5 at the Denver Broncos. And surprised I'm back on the Vikings again. I would have thought for sure I'd be selling high now, but the Broncos are also kind of riding high right now, and I continue to see value in the Vikings relative to the market, because what are you looking for a lot of times when you're making these bets, especially at this point in the season? You're looking for things that maybe aren't fully accounted for by the market. And I think with this Minnesota Viking team, as much as guys keep getting hurt, I still think that they're being undervalued, and specifically in this matchup for a couple of reasons. The first is on the defensive side of the ball, the first edge is they're the most blitz-happy team in the NFL. We know that under Brian Flores, who's done an amazing job taking talent that looked like the worst defense in the league, frankly, last year, and transforming it into a top 10 defense. But Russell Wilson, 113 passer rating when not blitzed, 79 passer rating when blitzed this year. His 34% drop-off in passer rating, 34-point drop-off in passer rating is the largest among 39 qualified quarterbacks against the blitz. He also has the highest pressure to sack rate when blitzed among those 39 quarterbacks as well. And then the number 2 edge on defense
goes like this when he gets blitzed down. He just ducks down and takes the
Yep. I feel like Cece told him, just get down, just protect yourself, bro. Like I don't think she wants him taking too many hits or something. Because it's really weird. It feels like his whole demeanor just kind of changed in regards to pressure over the last since joining Denver. But with that being said, I'm not here to knock Russ. He's been playing decently enough for them to get back to 500. He's great touchdown interception ratio, so not ragging on him, but he does struggle against the blitz and hasn't really played that many defense. I mean, there is no defense that blitzes at this rate, but it's not like he's played the Giants or any of those other super blitz happy teams either. But secondly, this Viking defense can stop this Denver running back centric offense. And that's been another key for Russ to survive out here, has been kind of going through the running, that three-headed monster. And really Javonte Williams now is kind of taking control, but they're throwing to the backs, they're handing to the backs. But Minnesota is 7th on defense in EPA per rush allowed. And on Denver's win streak, this stretch where they beat Kansas City and Buffalo and Green Bay, Buffalo 19th in EPA against the run, Kansas City 31st, and Green Bay 25th. So Denver really hasn't faced a defense with this type of scheme. So a lot of people may look at Minnesota and say, oh, this is, Buffalo is always good, and Kansas City has an elite defense this year, and Green Bay's, I mean, they're okay, but people might look at Minnesota as the weakest defense they faced in the stretch, whereas I actually think it's the best defense and the one that's going to give Russ the most trouble. Minnesota also is top 10 in DVOA on running back passes, and they're giving up the 5th fewest schedule adjusted receiving yards to running backs, which is big because Javonte Williams is being targeted on over 30% of his routes. And then, more value in the market for Minnesota. It's been, I don't know if I've ever seen something like this, but it seems like every time Minnesota gets somebody hurt, they can replace them without really suffering a major drop off. You go from Kirk Cousins, who is top 8 in EPA per play, in the first 8 weeks. Josh Dobbs, last 2 weeks with the Vikings, 7th in EPA per play, 7th in adjusted EPA per play. Justin Jefferson, 2nd in receiving yards per game. He goes down. Jordan Addison becomes the wide receiver 1. He's 2nd in touchdowns. And TJ Hawkinson is 3rd in catches and 8th in first down catches. So, you're and then you have Jordan Hicks now. The linebacker, he was playing great. Top 20 linebacker at PFF, graded out with a 76.7. Ivan Pace Jr. stepped in. His grade 74, in the top 25 as well. Actually playing better in some facets than Hicks through these first 10 weeks. So, that week that Darisaw went down, who was it? Quisenberry was like a top 2 tackle that week. So it's been crazy, but Minnesota is just not suffering those usual like replacement level drop offs. Same thing with Alexander Madison. I actually think Ty Chandler is probably an upgrade at this point over Alexander Madison, who looks like to miss with a concussion. But on the offensive
side, doesn't Jefferson have a shot to come back?
He does, but I actually don't think he is coming back. KJ Osborne should be back, and Jalen Naylor came back last week, and he had a under the radar rookie year and played 95% of the pass snaps last week in his first game back. So, they just keep finding ways to improve, even though they're down like all these guys at premium positions. It's pretty nuts. But offensively, Minnesota has an edge too that I don't really think the market is accounting for, and that is that no team in the league play actions nearly as much as the Minnesota Vikings. They have 110 play action passes this year. The next closest team is 82. And so this is like on defense, they blitz more than anyone. On offense, they play action more than anyone. Well, the defense who ranks last in passer rating against the play action, the Denver Broncos. The defense who ranks last in completion percentage against play action, the Denver Broncos. Everyone's saying the Denver Broncos turned around their defense, right? Starting in week 6, last half of the season, they turned it around. Here are the quarterback numbers with play action since their supposed turnaround. Week 6, Patrick Mahomes, only play action on 13% of his dropbacks, 5 of 6, 100 yards, 17 yards an attempt, 119 passer rating. Week 7, Jordan Love, play action on 30% of his dropbacks, 9 of 9 for 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 10 yards an attempt, 148 passer rating. Week 8, back to Mahomes, only play actioned on 18% of his dropbacks, 5 of 7 for 74 yards, just under 11 yards per attempt, passer rating of 106. When he didn't play action, 5.4 yards an attempt and a passer rating of 49. And then Josh Allen on Monday night, play action on 22% of his dropbacks, 8.6 yards an attempt, a passer rating of 102.5. When he did it, 6.4 and a passer rating of 49. So Minnesota has on both sides of the ball the perfect scheme to end this Denver Bronco win streak and continue their own. So even though I thought for sure I'd be fading the Vikings when they just keep on winning games, beating teams, covering spreads, I think they have some key matchup advantages here that are not being taken into account by the market. And you also got road dogs historically under a touchdown going up against the home favorite on short rest, like the Broncos, 91, 64, and 3, 59% against the spread since 2008. So I haven't put it in the app yet. I'm waiting to see if we get a 3. I know some money's been coming in on the Broncos, and it is a Sunday night game, so we got some time to wait. But like it at 2.5, like it at 2. Give me the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, I will push back. The Broncos have turned around their defense. I mean, you put McMillian in that slot. You benched Mathis for Morrow. got Browning back, got Jones back, but it's still not a great defense. It's just not.
Yeah. Oh, no, obviously. I'm not also trying to knock it, but I'm just saying, like, there's one facet which happens to be what the Vikings specialize in that they haven't turned it around.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I loved the Broncos on Monday night was that Russ has been so good against zone and then when he's not blitzed. And I was concerned that the Bills were going to incessantly blitz, and they ended up doing it like at the worst time. But they weren't blitzing early, and then they were playing zone, and Russ been very good against zone. But you can count on the Vikings to blitz, which then can neutralize some of the issues they could have in zone on the back end. So, don't hate it all more in this game later. But for my second pick and the fourth overall, the Week 11 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Houston Texans -5 against the Arizona Cardinals. Look, I think that, CJ Stroud is the truth. He's already a top 10 quarterback in my eyes. I think in a year or two, be a top 5 quarterback. Maybe by the end of the year. He's that good. I've seen what I've needed to see. And there's a lot of times when you get a rookie quarterback who's this good, and it rarely happens. He's having arguably the best. If he continues on this trend line, he'll have the best rookie quarterback season in the history of the NFL. There's, the way that odds makers, pure number modelers, which I just never think that you should cap NFL doing just, pure numbers. I think the best approach is combining, matchups, your numbers, and then, some subjective input as well. But a lot of those old models, the guys who just rely on models, they are slow to adjust with a rookie quarterback, because historically rookie quarterbacks are going to struggle, and you don't want to price a rookie quarterback as if he's already like a top 5 to 10 quarterback. I think that's the case. So I think that I'm going back to the Texans, and there are some big groups out there that do have more subjective, and we saw it last week. The Texans just got hammered down to 4.5, 5 on game day against the Bengals, and then won outright. So I think Stroud's that good. And if you look at these teams, so I just think the Texans are generally undervalued and probably will be for a bit. Stroud is playing out of his mind. There's the offensive line is now healthy. And if you look at these two teams, the Cardinals, the only thing I'm worried about is like a little bit of a letdown for a younger team, but you're going to be at home. And I just don't know how the Cardinals can stop them. This is one of the worst secondaries in the league. They have no corners who can match up, and they can't get pressure. One of the lowest pressure rates, lowest blitz rates in the NFL. And if you look at these two rosters, let's look at the important position groups. Offensive line, Texans have the advantage by a mile. Secondary, Texans by a mile. And now that their safeties are, you got to remember early in the year, they were playing with a bunch of backup offensive linemen without there's 2 starting safeties. And I really love, Jimmy Ward's a reliable safety, and I love Petrie at the other safety spot. They were both hurt earlier this season. And their corners and this whole defense is really rounding into the form. Other important positions, wide receivers, the Texans. And then edge rush, let's call it a wash. That's probably the one. You got Budda Baker, but that's probably the one strength of the Cardinals D. I like Ojulari. He's playing well. Gardeck is playing well too. But you got Will Anderson and Grenard are also playing really well. We'll call that a wash. Like this, the Texans are significantly better than the Cardinals. And quarterback, I'm taking Stroud over Kyler. And Kyler looked good and he looked healthy last week, but he also just doesn't have the same tools and offensive line around him. And Stroud is just that good right now. So this Cardinals team, they got a cute win over the Falcons. And by the way, that Falcons D is not good. And now without Grady Jarrett, who was getting double team more than any player in the NFL, opening up everything else, they were without Tony Mata as well. Falcons D is bad. This Texans D is better than Atlanta's. But look, we saw the Cardinals are going to have 2 or 3 wins this year. We saw them beat the Cowboys, and then they just got flattened every single week since then. That was with Josh Dobbs too, is playing well. This is a bad team. This is the worst team in the NFL for my numbers, besides the Tommy DeVito led Giants. So I think it's a cheap number for the Texans and Stroud, who's just undervalued in the market. It's that simple for me. Give me Houston.
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth on this. I might end up joining you. One of like the pure number models, I had, put this number closer to 7 in favor of the Texans, but there's just so much uncertainty for me, really on both sides.
I'm like 6.5, 6.5,
yeah,
6, 7, 6, 7, I think.
I can't knock it, but for me, it's just there's a little bit like there's a lot more uncertainty in that projection than most, than most that I project, because on one side, I still don't know exactly what to make of this Texan team's consistency. And that goes on both sides of the ball, really. And you kind of mentioned the letdown spot, which adds to it. But, for as good as Stroud has been, you had the dud in Carolina. And then
I think that's the key. I think that's the key to this. What's also driving the value on the Texans down a little bit, because, and again, going back to like guys who just look at numbers and overall efficiency, the Texans, Slowick, who's a Shanahan disciple, what does Shanahan always want to do? He wants to get the run started. Well, yeah, when you have one of the, you have Trent Williams, one of the best running backs in the NFL. You also have like two other offensive linemen and your fullback and Juszczyk and one of the best blocking tight ends in NFL history, and George Kittle and McCaffrey. And you've always had good backs. You can always run it. And like Slowick was just being too stubborn, it wasn't just that. That was that entire Carolina game. And because the game was so close, he just kept trying to do it. And then there was other instances early in the season. And I said, look, they lost that game. And thank God. I think it's the best thing that happened to the Texans is losing that game. And I was like, they better, hopefully they open it up here. And after that game, and then after the following week, when they did open it up and shot through for like 500 yards against the Bucs, him and Slowick and Ryans came out and said, we made a mistake. We need to rely on our strengths, hand the keys to Stroud. So they've done the past 2 weeks. So, I was worried about the offense in that aspect, because then Stroud would come out and he would look so good when they would just get behind. And that's not what you wanted. You want to do that from the beginning, and they have the past 2 weeks. So I'm not worried about that, the offense anymore. I think like that Panthers game, I think it was like the best thing that ever happened to Stroud in this offense. The fact that they lost it, because if they won it even by one, and then they probably would have been still a little bit more stubborn going forward. But I think they just continue to open it up.
Yeah, I hope so, because remember, I've been on the Texans since early in the season too. I had them against the Jags, and I went right back to them against Pittsburgh when not many people were on that island with me, and they ended up winning 30-6. And then I go back to them a third week in a row, and I think that was the week we all covered and Ravel didn't when they lose to the Falcons. Yeah. But that was kind of a letdown after they win the previous two games, 67-23, and then they beat get a good win against the Saints as a dog, come off the bye, and then score lose 15-13 to the Panthers. I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on? And then just when the offense starts getting right against the Bucs, but the defense gives up 37. I know they had some guys hurt, but it's been a little up and down. So that was when I'm betting a favorite, I think I'm just a little more, I guess, conservative when it comes to the uncertainty. When it's an underdog, like it's all value. So I'm not as worried. But like on the Arizona side, I'm still not sure exactly. I know the defense is bad, obviously. I just don't know exactly how to power rate this offense. Or I'm not as. I think there's some there's more error in my rating than there would be in a normal one, just because we've only had one game for Cairo in the new system. It came against a bad Falcons defense, but that was also a Falcons defense that the Texans only scored 19 against. And then Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, but Jarrett was in. I'm telling you, Jarrett was. And
that's fair. That's fair. But and also it's you had this offense was a top 10 offense for the first month of the season with Josh Dobbs, but is that just because Josh Dobbs is a lot better than we realized too? So there's just a lot of moving parts. I still might join you, but just kind of walking through my process.
I think the Cardinals offense will have some success, and I don't mind the over here. So, but I think it's gonna be a higher scoring game, which makes me less hesitant to back the favorite.
No, it makes sense. Makes sense. All right. To wrap it up, we got a fun one here because we don't often do this, but we're gonna go head to head on a pick. So, which we can do for the contest as long as we're on opposite sides. So the one thing we can't do is pick the same side. So we're on opposite sides of a hilarious game. So I can't wait to go back and forth with you on this one. For my third pick and the fifth overall of the Week 11 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers +1 at the Cleveland Browns. And I already know why you're on the opposite side. And I can't say I disagree with the reasoning. I mean, the Steelers have been by far, the luckiest team in the National Football League.
Six wins,
yeah,
all by one possession, all in comeback fashion, outgained in every game.
Outgained in every game.
Only team in NFL history to be outgained in every game through 9 weeks with a winning record, and they're 6-3.
Frauds, complete frauds. But yet, and this is why I like the Steelers, even though they've been frauds. They just got lucky again. Like before they stepped on the field, they've gotten lucky again twice, in my opinion. Because number one, Deshaun Watson is announced out for the year. Okay, fine. He's already been in and out. But then it's announced that they're going to start Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And I like him. I liked him in the preseason, but it was rough for him in his first start. And I just don't think that going up against a Mike Tomlin Steeler D with Watt healthy, with Hayward healthy on that front, with both of your tackles out, Conklin's on IR, Wills is on IR, DeJuan Jones didn't practice, Wyatt Teller didn't practice. So with a banged up line going against TJ Watt and Hayward and company and his Steeler defense, and looking as bad as he looked in his first start, in the only sample we have of him in live NFL action. I know it was against a great Ravens D, but the Steelers D is not far off. The Steelers D is a top 10 defense in its own right, top 10 in pressure rate, top 10 in sack rate, top 10 in adjusted sack rate. I just don't think it's a good look for him. And there is a big drop off between, the levels of these quarterbacks. So, because obviously Kenny Pickett is bad in his own right, and Deshaun Watson wasn't great. So 45 quarterbacks have had at least as many plays as DTR this year. He ranks 45th of 45 in EPA per play at negative 0.49. That means every time he takes a snap, he's essentially losing the Browns a half a point. That's not good. Now, for comparison's sake, he's 45th, right? Deshaun Watson was 29th, so he wasn't great. Kenny Pickett, 34th. PJ Walker, 40th. So you're going from, like Watson kind of came alive against the Ravens, fine. Pickett, not good. Walker, even worse. DTR, bottom of the barrel. Now, Cleveland's defense is elite. So that's what they have going for them. But I just can't not take the opportunity to fade who has been the worst quarterback in the league this year, third stringer, worse EPA than DeVito, weighing points. So give me the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as we record this, Pittsburgh's still +1 at BetMGM. They're still a dog at a lot of spots. And, that's another one of these things. We talked about these AFC North, this AFC North football. Mike Tomlin, 65% against the spread as a dog, 55-29, 29-15, 69% as a dog coming off a win, 15-4, 79% as a dog without Ben Roethlisberger, 38-14, 73% as a dog against an opponent with an equal or better straight up win-loss record. So they got the underdog trends on their side. You got a terrible quarterback weighing points. I respect the defense, but give me Steelers.
Yeah, I completely disagree here. I was so happy when Watson. I wasn't happy that Watson got hurt, but from a betting perspective, when it came out Watson was going to be out for the year, I said, "Oh my God, I'm going to get the Browns under 3 now," and that's all I wanted because I was not going to lay over 3 in a AFC North game between these two defenses with a total of I would probably close at like 36.
It's already down to like 33 and a half.
Yeah, this total's going down to like 33, 32. So I was very happy. And then, believe it or not, I was happy when they announced that GTR would start. So you mentioned GTR's numbers. I mean, I basically look. Yeah, he was the worst in EPA play. Threw a bunch of picks in one game. We'll start one game. That's what's going to happen. We already know, and we already know how bad PJ Walker is. Like, out of 49 quarterbacks with at least 30 plays this year, here are the bottom 3 in EPA plus completion percentage over expectation. 47th is DeVito, negative 0.025. 48 is Walker, negative 0.042. 49 is Rippon, negative 0.073. GTR is 43rd, but I don't care. I mean, it's one start. He threw a bunch of picks. Pickett is 40th, behind Mac Jones, one spot ahead of the one and only Zach Wilson. DTR found out he was starting the day of the game, and he's a rookie. He didn't know he was starting until the morning of the game.
I actually heard that was false. I actually heard he misspoke on that. I heard he knew he was starting. He just didn't know. Like that was a whole ado about nothing. Like he took first team reps in practice. Like he knew he was going to start. He knew he was going to start.
Regardless,
but your point is taken. You're like, keep going.
Regardless, he got his beak wet, and the Ravens defense is better than the Steelers defense. And I mean, look, the Steelers defense, their secondary is attackable. I mean, look, Jordan Love came to life last week. Packers moved up and down the field. I could go on and on about the regression that's coming for the Steelers. They've been so lucky in every game just drops. And last week you don't get a clear defensive touchdown called. But I don't care. The only thing the Browns need to do in this game. So I think DTR actually, and I liked DTR coming out of college. I think he has a little bit more upside than Walker in this game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can use his legs and but I personally would not use a quarterback in this game if I was the Browns. The best unit in this game by far is the Browns defense. Head and shoulders above. And Kenny Pickett is Matt Ryan has more touchdown passes than Kenny Pickett over the past 2 seasons. And I would just use a punter. I would come out and I wouldn't even run it on first, second, and third down, because then you can get Steelers voodoo and like a fumble. You want to maximize the amount of time that Kenny Pickett has the ball against this defense. I would punt it on first down every single possession. And if they do that and they don't turn it over, don't even look, and all the regression could come at once for the Steelers. It's coming. And this is one of the worst offenses in the NFL, one of the worst quarterbacks, one of the worst schemed offenses. And they've just been winning with voodoo. They've played like a 2-7 team, and they're 6-3. But all I need is no fluke turnovers. And if there was ever a team that was due to not get any, so I think the Browns are going to come out here. There's a reason this total is dropping, and they're going to say, "Okay, we saw what happened in the first start." I think what's going to happen is they're just going to run. They're just going to run it, and they're going to run into walls. Steelers' run defense is better with Hayward back, so they're not going to have much success doing it. And then every once in a while, they're going to take a deep, deep shot down, the sidelines, and where if you turn it over, it's not a big deal. I doubt you're going to see them throw over the middle of the field much. You'll probably have some designed runs for DTR. The entire game plan for the Browns has to be: don't turn it over, don't turn it over, don't turn it over. Rely on that defense, and so you have these two offenses that won't be able to do anything. I trust the Browns defense more at home to make more plays, essentially. And so I'm riding with the Browns D, hoping that the Steelers regression comes. But even if it doesn't, the Browns can still win this game. So yeah, give me Cleveland -1. Let's go head to head on another Browns game. Rarely happens.
Oh, it's always the Browns. It's somehow always the Browns, bro. Always the damn Browns. But yeah, I mean, listen, your point is taken. I would just counter with this whole year.
Just say voodoo.
I mean, you're saying, like, if there's ever a team due not to to get like fluke turnovers. If there's ever a team that's likely to get fluke turnovers, it's the
This
Pittsburgh
happened to the
Steelers.
Steelers, luckiest team
Like,
in our luck
they went,
rankings
what did they
through
go, like
10
11-0 that like a couple years ago? Like they're not done yet.
They
They
did this
can
in 2020,
they can keep this going
2021,
a couple more games.
and then they finished 500 and it all came crashing down.
Also, the underrated weapon, you forget, sideline Canada, weeks 1 through 8 with Canada up in the booth, 29th in EPA per play. Last 2 weeks with Canada on the sideline, 6th in EPA per play. So, secret weapon, bruh. Browns defense ain't ready.
Yeah, I mean, who did they play the last 2 weeks?
The Titans and who was it?
Yeah.
The Packers. Packers.
Titans, Packers, 2 of the worst secondaries in the NFL, especially because Jair Alexander didn't play. More voodoo.
Yeah,
and
that's the point. All right, well, that's gonna wrap it up for the Week 11 Sunday 6-pack. Just to recap, Stuck has the Bears +9, the Texans -5, and the Browns -1. I have the Rams +1, Vikings +2.5, and the Steelers +1.